I wanted to start this episode off with a quick product notification. The Standard H Avantis were the first release of the Standard H Signature Collection, which much to my delight sold out. But good news, they're back in stock. Available in 5 colors and now available in double extra large. Visit standard-h.com to pick yours up, and if you've never been to the site before, you'll receive 15% off your entire first order. As a side note, there's also been a restock of the Shift logo tees. And for you international listeners, international economy shipping is now a delivery option on the site. Thank you so much for the support, as I'm confident you'll love these shirts as well as this episode. Chances are good if you're listening to this, you also listen to the Grey NATO podcast, which today's guest co-hosts alongside friend and former guest James Stacy. He's also a longtime contributor for Hodinkee, a Gear Patrol alum, and officially the first Hodinkee editor to be featured on Talking Watches. Of course, I'm talking about Mr. Jason Heaton. I'm such a fan of his pragmatic approach to life, and all of the above only support my admiration. This conversation was a fun one. We of course talk watches and gear, but we delve into the reasons why we enjoy what we like, and even to my surprise, we take several minutes going deep on the manufacturing process of Oreo cookies. Yes, Oreo cookies. Jason truly is more than meets the eye, and I was excited to get a peek behind the curtain of his book Depth Charge, a fiction novel released 4 months ago and available through his website and the Hodinkee shop. Needless to say, I was thrilled to have Jason on the show, and we wrap things up with a tiny bit of travel advice and a shout-out segment to his wife Kashani, who is awesome in her own right. I'm your host, Wesley Smith, and you're listening to the Standard H Podcast. Well, first and foremost, not only thank you for taking the time, but before I forget, thank you so much for the support and the release of the Avanti. It was a total surprise when listening and humbled to say the least. So thank you so much.
Oh, it's such a great shirt, and I wear it quite a bit, and I'm still waiting for your extra larges to get back in stock. I'd love to get one in each color. I just think they're great.
Thanks.
And then of course, I told you I had this minor disaster with it. Like within the first few days of owning it, I was out fiddling with the Land Rover and managed to squirt like 90 weight gear oil right across the chest. And I've got the light gray one, and of course, I thought it was just ruined. And after a couple of washings, you can hardly even see it. Like it's just the tiniest sort of very light stain, and I think it'll eventually come out. And it's funny because if I wear the shirt on a warm day and my body heat reacts with the shirt, I get this slight waft of gear oil, which I quite like, actually. I think it kind of goes well with the shirt. I'm thinking I should suggest that to you for future editions, just sort of...
Just do a pre-rinse of oil.
Infuse it with gear oil. Yeah.
Oh man, that's
for a
hilarious.
True automotive experience. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think I speak for myself anyway that I love the smell of gasoline.
Yeah, I do too. And this, having an old Land Rover, you get used to. It has a specific smell. I mean, people used to tell me that Land Rovers had a particular smell, and they sure do. They smell of. Even though mine isn't a soft top, it's got the hard top on it. It does smell like an old, army tent to a certain degree, and then this smell that wafts up from the gearbox, which is under this very thin sheet metal right kind of by your left leg. Well, mine's a right-hand drive, so my left leg, and you get that gear oil smell, and I really have quite grown to like it. And then a little bit of gasoline smell too. I suppose that's from the filler neck or something like that. But
right,
it all kind of combines to this lovely Land Rover perfume.
I love it. The Land Rover perfume. They should, much in the same way I need to rinse my shirts with gear oil. I think Land Rover needs to release that scent as a cologne.
Yeah, right. I wouldn't be surprised if they do. The way that modern vehicles are going, they're expanding out into jewelry and fragrances and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Like I was just thinking how the electric cars can emit sound of an engine out of some that'll come out of the speakers. It'd be funny if the air conditioning could blow gas fumes in your face. Obviously with the windows down only and well ventilated. And
Yeah, right.
oh my gosh. Well, again, Jason, thanks so much for taking the time to be a part of the show. I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah, happy to be here.
You're based in Minnesota. Did you grow up there, or have you been there a while?
No, I was born in Illinois, and then when I was a little kid, we moved to Wisconsin, and I spent kind of most of my teen years and high school days in Milwaukee, the Milwaukee area,
Yeah.
and then moved up to Minneapolis for university. So that was quite a ways away, or quite a long time ago, and I've been here ever since. So
Nice.
I graduated from the University of Minnesota with an English Lit degree, and just kind of stayed on. Got a series of jobs and settled down, and that's how it went.
That's awesome. So obviously the Bucks just won the NBA championship. Do you care at all? Are you a Bucks homer?
No, I kind of stopped following basketball many years ago. I mean, I remember when I was growing up there, my dad and I used to go to home games. I think we didn't have season tickets, but you could buy blocks of sort of ticket packages, and we used to go regularly when it was at the Mecca Arena is what it used to be called, and that was a good time. I remember those days. Marcus Johnson was on the team. Sidney Moncrief were a couple of the names that sort of dates me, but they were the kind of the big names back then.
Right.
So,
I saw Eric Wind took his son Charlie to a game, which I just thought was awesome.
Oh yeah. Yeah, those early, teen year experiences, or even younger, going to pro ball games is so memorable.
Yeah, totally. What did your parents do while you were growing up?
My dad was he had a series of jobs. So he was when I was a really little kid, he was an art teacher, and he has a fine arts degree also from the University of Minnesota, and so early on he was a teacher, and then he got into visual merchandising. So he used to do window displays for department stores.
No kidding.
And then kind of moved up the corporate ladder in various kind of retail businesses. And my mom was a longtime teacher, mostly of young kids, kindergarten age or even younger than that. So she's
Oh wow.
very little kid oriented, which I'm sure much to her disappointment, we never had kids, but
right.
she loves kids. So yeah.
Right.
But yeah.
So were either of your parents or your dad specifically a car guy? Because where did the car bug come from for you?
Well, probably indirectly from my dad. He, for a while when we were living in Milwaukee, he took a job at a kind of a startup department store chain down in the Chicago area, which was a good hour and a half commute each way from where we lived. And rather than move, he started commuting in what was a Renault Encore. I don't know if you've ever heard of that one, but it was a two-door Renault that they used to sell here. And it was a tiny car, and my dad was a pretty big guy. And it was a long commute. And of course, the gas mileage was great in that thing, but it wasn't very comfortable. So I remember I was in high school. I wasn't quite driving age yet, but we went to shop for a new commuter car for him. And we ended up at this dealership in suburban Milwaukee, and there was this 1982 BMW 528e
Nice.
in black with like tan leather. And, it was unlike any car we had owned. I mean, we had Ford station wagons and this Renault, and my dad had a 76 Honda Civic that he used to drive around. And so pretty run-of-the-mill kind of old cars. And I remember going test driving with my dad in that BMW, and it was I think we both just lit up. I think it changed both of our lives, And so I kind of learned to drive in that car and had a number of sort of scary escapades, nearly totaling it one time and whatever, because it was terrible on the ice, and I was a very inexperienced driver. And
Oh wow.
but it kind of stuck with me. And then I remember when I was, from there, my first car was a Volkswagen Rabbit, and I
Nice.
kind of learned to tinker a little bit with that. And then from there, it was just this long list of kind of interesting vehicles. I've had, Saab 900 Turbo and Audi 5000 and
Amazing.
Mark I Volkswagen Rabbit GTI, and Alfa Romeo Spider and some other kind of fun things, and then kind of landed with Land Rovers, and that's where I'm at now.
Man, that's so crazy. You've got iconic cars in your history. That's amazing.
Yeah, they were fun. It was mainly European sports cars for a long time. I had a Jeep Wrangler for a while that was fun. But yeah, I've always really enjoyed, mainly German cars. But if I look back, I think I had a Volvo 240 wagon for a while. But that Saab 900 Turbo still sticks out as a car I'd love to. Looking back, I don't have any regrets of selling any of them. But if I could get one back, or if I was ever to rebuy one, I think it would be that 900 Turbo. Yeah, it was a 3-door, with a giant hatchback and that kind of clamshell hood, and it was a wonderful, wonderful car.
Was it? I'm assuming it was manual, and I remember Saabs always had those like softball size gear shifts.
Huge gear shift, and in order to put it in reverse, it had this ring that you'd have to pull up with your
right. Yeah.
I don't know how you describe it, and then the key, the ignition key, was down between the seats. And you had to have it in reverse to start it. I think there was some weird starting sequence. Yeah. And I remember one time it was either stuck in reverse or the key was stuck in the ignition, or there was some weird thing about it. I don't know. It was, old cars. It was quirky, but it was wonderful in the snow. I think it was the first car I had that had heated seats and that big giant wraparound windshield. And
totally.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
Yeah, the one that got away from me was my grandfather's 88 Cherokee Laredo. And
oh, nice.
Dude, I miss that thing so much. I talk about it all the time with my wife, and I have had it on the to-do list forever to call the dealership that used to work on it and just have them search their banks for like the VIN number and then somehow track the car down, because I will totally buy it again if I can find it. I just hope somebody hasn't done like the modern, lift kit, making it a mud crawler or rock crawler.
Yeah.
I just pray that didn't happen, because it was pristine. But it had a bunch of oil leaks that just were incessant. So as a result, I got rid of it because it was like, just hemorrhaging money. And and as a result, like, it was the one time that my grandmother was like, she ever got like audibly angry with me. She was just like, I can't believe you sold that. She's like, we would have bought that back. And I was like, it was the only time in my life that I can recall that I felt like I disappointed my grandparents. Oh man, that conversation haunts me to this day. That's crazy. What was the first job you ever had? Did you have a job in high school or anything?
Well, I guess when I was in high school, I did a lot of, and I kind of lament the fact, I always, now that I'm a homeowner for the past 16 years or so, I always think, why, where are the kids? Where are the teenagers that used to like cut grass and paint houses and stuff? Because that's what I did. I would,
oh, cool,
go around the neighborhood or talk to my parents' friends or whatever, and if they needed their garage painted, they'd hire me for the summer or a month or so, and I'd scrape it and sand it and prime it and paint it, and then cutting grass and that sort of stuff. But I made a brief attempt at having kind of the typical teenage job of working fast food. I had the early shift at a McDonald's where I had to go in, I think it was at 4:00 in the morning, and disassemble the soft serve machine, clean all the parts, soak everything in a soap bath, and then sterilize it or whatever, and then reassemble it and fill it with whatever the mix was that made the soft serve. And
which you can't disclose it, I guess. That's classified information.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I've had interesting sort of food making jobs, because when I think back to kind of my first real job out of college.
Okay.
When I was in college, I guess this is also food prep related. When I was in college, I got a job roasting coffee, which was really fun. I almost thought that I wanted to kind of make that a career, like buy an old roaster and stick it in a warehouse and roast coffee for a living, because I still think about that as a retirement thing. But then anyway, after college, with an English lit degree, like there's only so much you can do, and I found a job as a technical writer with a company that engineered packaging machine systems for the food industry. And so my first big gig was to travel almost weekly down to it was the biggest bakery in the world at the time. It was the Nabisco Bakery in Chicago.
Oh, no kidding.
And
right.
we had to write all of the operation and maintenance manuals for all the machinery that made Oreo cookies. And it was fascinating. You know, it was this giant old, it was like going into some medieval, you know, strange cave with all these wacky, very custom machines for a very specific purpose. And they would, you know, take this kind of slurry of lard and whatever else for the filling, and then the rotary sandwich machine. I remember it was called the RSM, and it would, you know, put the bottom cookie would come across on the conveyor belt, then it would go to squirt of the filling, and then this rotary machine would come and slap the top cookie on the Oreo, and then it would go into an oven or cooling tray or whatever it was. And I remember one of life's little pleasures was to like eat an Oreo cookie fresh out of the oven, which, you know, who else can say that? It was pretty cool.
Oh my God. I have so many questions for you. Okay. So first and foremost, all right. So I grew up in North Carolina, and Krispy Kreme Donuts was like founded where my grandparents lived.
Oh,
and so I like grew up on those. So like now they're all over the US, and if the hot now sign is on in the window, it's a lifelong thing. Like I have to stop. If it's illuminated, it doesn't matter if I'm hungry, I'm stopping.
Yeah, right.
With this Oreo cookie job of yours, which is utterly fascinating.
Yeah.
Did the top get put on in a screw-like motion in the opposite direction in the same way that we would unscrew the top when separating them?
No. So picture a big conveyor belt with the bottom cookie, and then as that row of cookies goes under the little nozzles, it would get a squirt of the filling, and then this, I guess you'd call it like a barrel that had the top cookie, and I don't know how they adhered to that barrel so they didn't just fall off. But anyway, they would, as the barrel came around, it was timed so that it would line up with the bottom cookie with the filling on it. And then kind of slap it on, and then it was this kind of continuous process. And this was after both the cookies were baked. The lard concoction was made in a separate machine, and then they would go into this long, I can't remember what they called it, the cooling tunnel. The cooling tunnel, that's what it was. Nice. And they would get cooled off and then into the packaging machinery at the end. And so it was great, you know. It was fun work. It taught me a lot about writing succinctly and about how machines work. And, you know, in those days, you know, I would go as the technical writer. I would go with one of our technical illustrators who would take a camera, and we would document the whole thing and then fly back to Minneapolis, go to the office, and then write about how this thing works and how to take it apart and maintain it and fix it and fill it and operate it. And, so I learned about, you know, photocells and proximity switches and all the little weird equipment that goes into these big packaging machines. And I kind of did that for a career, because then I even switched companies, and I did it for a big Swedish company that makes the juice boxes and milk cartons out of Sweden. And I used to travel for that job and document the same sort of stuff. So that was kind of the first half of my professional career was technical writing for the food packaging industry. So.
That's incredible. So when you were writing these things, who was reading it? Is it for like manuals for the employees that were hired?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there was a series of manuals. We had the installation manual, the operation manual, and the maintenance manual. And,
Got it.
So installation would be as it suggests, and then operation was for the workers that were hired, mostly, you know, hourly workers that would come in and, you know, stand at the machines and work it. And then the maintenance were for kind of the maintenance engineers that had to kind of keep these things running. So it was like maintenance schedules and all of that stuff. Yeah.
So I guess the operators turn it on and off, but also fill the barrel with the tops of the cookies, etc.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh man, that's insane.
And it gave me a deep love for technical manuals. To this day,
Sure.
I still love a good manual. You know, I remember that's one of the, I don't know about you, but for me, one of the fun things about getting a new vehicle is, or not a new vehicle, but an old vehicle, a used vehicle, a fun vehicle is chasing down the manual to fix it. You know, when I got the Land Rovers, it was like, oh, you go on the forums online, and it's like, you've got to get the Green Bible. You know, and the Green Bible is this green book that tells you how to basically fix, you know, maintain your old Land Rover.
Sure.
it's the official shop manual for it. So it's just fun to just sit on an evening, in the winter by the fire and have a whiskey or something and just flip through. Oh, that's how you rebuild the gearbox or whatever,
Oh,
So,
man. That's wonderful. That just like warms my heart. That's just awesome. You were a part of the early days of Gear Patrol as a result, I guess, from technical writing. Was that sort of the foray into gear and stuff like that? Is you kind of made that switch? Like, how did you find Gear Patrol?
So yeah, I had a series of day jobs, and on the side, I would be kind of perusing all of these kind of then new kind of cool websites that were coming up. This was 2008, 2009, and at the time I had been working part time at a shop here called Midwest Mountaineering, and then at REI to kind of just get discounts on outdoor gear because I was doing a lot of hiking and skiing and backpacking and that sort of thing. And so when Gear Patrol, which was a site that I visited, put out a call for freelance writers because they were just kind of growing at the time, I had to submit kind of some samples. I remember they had various categories, and they said, please write a review of a product that you own. And then I don't remember, there were a couple of other little writing samples that I had to submit, and I still have them. I don't know, they're somewhere on my computer, and every once in a while I go back and look, and I just kind of cringe. But at that time, it was all about just gear reviews, just like short, little
Blurbs.
succinct blurbs about the latest pair of boots or something. And
Yeah.
and I got the job. Yeah, and then that kind of led into some watch coverage after I learned how to dive and got into dive watches. And yeah, then it things just blossomed from there, and then Hodinkee and on and on. So
That's awesome. Yeah, I had a fashion and lifestyle blog, as it were.
Oh, wow.
In like 2008 through
oh, nice.
or maybe it was 2009 through like 2013 when I went to work for Gucci, and they put a kibosh on on writing that because I was busy promoting other brands just in general.
Sure.
Which now they can't stop you from doing any of that because of Instagram and stuff, how it's all blown up. So there's no way they're not, so anyway, it's funny how their like social media clauses changed over the years, but that was kind of interesting. It's still up if you want to check it out. It's called Screaming Mouth.
Wow. It's still there. I mean, yeah, the internet doesn't forget.
Yeah, it's alive. I still pay for the URL for $9.99 on GoDaddy annually or whatever it is. It's worth $10 to have the memento, I guess. But
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, so like when you were writing for Gear Patrol, I only bring that up because I'm very familiar with the blurb writing process.
Yeah, right.
I will ask though, were you choosing the products that you were writing about then, or were they giving you products to write about?
It was kind of a mix. It was at first it was kind of me chasing stuff down. Sometimes I'd write about things I had bought or owned myself. And then as the site grew and as their exposure grew and my own exposure grew, then the PR reps kind of find you. And then of course they want you to write up various things. And I remember one of the ones I'm probably the most ashamed of was this strange product by Prestone. And it was this spray bottle of some very foul liquid that you put on the windows of your car to keep them from freezing in the winter.
Oh.
And I remember, writing up this, gear review or this test, because living in Minnesota, it's a wonderful place to test a product like that. We have like 8 months of winter, So I remember spraying it all over the windows of our, Volvo SUV or whatever, and then going out and, sure enough, it worked. But man, it left the filthiest film all over the windows for months. I couldn't get it off. It was this kind of oily, greasy sort of film, and it would smear when you'd use the windshield wipers and whatever. But I'm sure that still can be found on the site somewhere. But yeah. I mean, my kind of feeling was, and people still ask me like, well, did you ever write anything bad about a product? And I'd say, you know what? I only wrote about stuff that I liked. I only really wrote about stuff that I was interested in. The same goes for any of the watch stuff I've written. And it's, most products these days, especially in the luxury watch space, are by and large very good. There's not much bad about a lot of stuff. But like there were a few duds that would come across, and I'd kind of go back to the PR rep and say, this just isn't working for me. This photo backpack with the weird clamshell opening at the bottom for swinging around your waist so you can access your lenses is just not working for me. And I'd rather than kind of just write a bunch of negative stuff about it, I'd just rather send it back to you. And they were always okay with that because they don't want negative publicity. And
right.
And so, yeah, it was a lot of cool stuff. And then Gear Patrol sort of let my leash out a little bit, and the site expanded into a bit more of a lifestyle site. And they really, for a while there, they got into, some travel essays and kind of more themed content. And they really let me kind of just go to town, and I just write, travel and adventure stories about, climbing Mount Rainier or swimming from Alcatraz across San Francisco Bay, or, backpacking trips and that sort of stuff. And it allowed me to sort of live my dream of being sort of this mini John Krakauer kind of adventure writer, which I always wanted to be anyway. After years of subscribing to Outside Magazine, it was sort of my dipping my toe into that space.
If you haven't heard episode 1 of the Standard Age podcast, then let me tell you about my friend Tim Jackson. As owner of Passion Fine Jewelry, Tim and his team specialize in fine jewelry as well as some of the finest independent watch brands available. I'm talking about Groenfeld, Habring, Hodinkee, Roger Smith, Roman Gauthier, Sarpaneva, the list goes on. The staff at Passion Fine Jewelry is literally made up of friends and family, so you will feel right at home if and when you visit. If California is out of reach, you can absolutely email or call the shop and they'll get you sorted. Visit passionfinejewelry.com for more information. As you all know, I'm a huge fan of using the right product for the right job, and like many of you, I appreciate products with a story. That's why I drive a Volkswagen GTI. It's a hot hatch with heritage. It's also why I'm into specific watches like my Tudor Black Bay. And that's exactly why I'm a fan of the indie accessory brand Cantonment. Cantonment makes a utilitarian cloth they simply call a kerchief. It's smaller than a standard bandana, but larger than a handkerchief, which makes it ideal to tuck in a back pocket or use as a neckerchief. I always take one on a bike ride or have one with me as a backup face covering. Not only do these kerchiefs satisfy several functions, but they look great too. Each set features illustrations celebrating icons of product design like the Omega Speedmaster, the Fender Stratocaster, or my favorite of course, a classic GTI. Follow them on Instagram at Cantonment Co. That's CantonmentCo, or visit them at cantonment.co. And use the code STANDARDH in all caps, no spaces, for 20% off of absolutely everything in their online shop. Now let's get back to the show. Well, obviously I was kind of introduced to you via the Grey NATO, of course, and Hodinkee, I guess. I guess I was reading your articles prior to me even listening to the Grey NATO, which is obviously your podcast with former Standard Age podcast guest James Stacy, who's, just a sweetheart of a guy. I'd imagine you kind of, and forgive me for maybe even putting words in your mouth, but is there like a big brother sort of mentality you have with James, or is it just kind of compatriot?
I think I don't see the kind of the brother thing. I mean, I grew up with a sister, so I don't really know the brother relationship. So I guess maybe there's that. I think it's a little, I don't want to say a little less chummy. I would say it's we're more good friends.
That's great.
Than kind of more of a familial feel to it. But
right.
Yeah, I was thinking the other day, and I'm a pretty introverted guy, but I would probably say he's the person I talk to the most, or not even talk. We communicate on Slack most days, but he's the guy I'm always bouncing things off of, and vice versa. Just we'll come across an interesting article or have a question about something. He's, we play to our strengths. I mean, he's obviously pretty dialed into kind of the tech scene. So anytime I have a question about, file storage or, a new laptop or a pair of headphones or something, he's the go-to guy. I always kind of joke with him that he's kind of the modern version of what Wirecutter used to be, just sort of this really in-depth kind of critical reviewer of all things tech. So
right.
He's been a great resource for that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny, with the pandemic and everything over the last year plus, he and I were talking, and he too is somewhat of an introvert, or at least very comfortable with being at home and things.
Yeah, yeah.
And, that was one thing that was certainly exposed was the number of people that I know and am friends with that are so comfortable being at home and that are introverted. Like I was completely unaware prior to the pandemic that I had so many introverted friends, and I was just like
Yeah,
starting to
yeah.
question, like, do you guys even want to hang out with me? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I always joke, with it. I was like born for this. It's like,
right?
yeah, like being homebound or like locked in. Like I can do this.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, yeah, it's time. It's time to get out. I mean, I have branched out in the past couple of months and seen more people in those 2 months than I probably did in the previous 18 or 24 months, and it's felt good. It's felt good to reconnect.
Yeah,
But,
for sure.
Yeah.
Well, what do you remember most about the first few episodes you guys recorded for Grey NATO?
I remember feeling not like feeling like nervous almost, even though it was a recorded thing and James was going to edit it and we could cut stuff out and redo stuff. There was this urgency, this feeling of I hadn't done that sort of thing before, and it was this idea that what if I don't know what to say, or kind of stumble around a little bit, and that's completely evaporated now. I mean, there's just a comfort level that we have, and
Totally.
but a lot has changed, but also not much has changed. I think we still, I don't know if it's a big secret, but we often just make up the topic like an hour before the episode, and we'll be like, "Oh, should we record today? Yeah, we should definitely record." And it's like, "What do you want to talk about?" We haven't done a watch episode in a while. Let's talk about, whatever. And then like we'll quickly put together some kind of skeletal notes, and then kind of just start recording, and it just sort of flows. I think the rapport that we've developed over 5+ years of doing it kind of shows now that we don't need to over prepare, and we can kind of riff off each other pretty well now. So
Yeah.
that's changed, that kind of comfort and confidence, I guess, in that what we're talking about, people actually want to listen to,
Sure.
which I'm always struck by. I just think, gosh, whenever I talk to people in person or on Instagram direct messages or anything, we just have such a loyal and really supportive audience, and it's such something we're both so thankful for. Is just the support we get is just tremendous. So.
Yeah, there's a couple of things there. Like one is just before we were recording, we were just talking, my wife and I, about well, I just brought up the fact that like we as humans we're pack animals, like we're herd animals. And it's like, to your point a moment ago when you're like, yeah, it's time, to like see people again and do all that. I think it's like, I mean, that's why solitary confinement is considered punishment in a prison system. It's like,
Right. True.
It's not normal, so and it doesn't help in any way. So yeah, I think like, it's just really interesting that you bring that up too. That I think honestly, the Grey NATO is by far one of my favorite podcasts, and I think it's because there are these commonalities and interests we as listeners and you guys as hosts share. And I'm kind of curious though, like, is there any common positive feedback that you guys receive that may or may not allude to why the show is successful?
I think obviously the greatest amount of feedback or questions we get via email or individual messages is about watch stuff, which is actually the least exciting to me. I'm kind of the watch world is a crazy one, and it's one that I have mixed feelings about. But I think what we've done on the show is we've incorporated that into an overall philosophy of life, so to speak, or just a worldview. And I think where that fits in is a watch is a supporting element to the stuff you do. And I think if there's anything that we try to imbue the show with, it's that. And I think that's the feedback that we get. That's the majority of the good stuff that I see is people writing or saying in person or whatever it is. And they say, hey, you've inspired me to learn how to dive, or I enjoyed your discussion with so and so, and it's made me pick up a new book, or whatever. And it's like, to me, without patting ourselves on the back too much, I feel like that level of inspiration has been like almost embarrassingly surprising to me. Like, it's like, wow, I can't believe the impact we have on some people in a very positive way. And every time I think, we might get a little down, or like we've run out of things to talk about, or is this going to be interesting to people, I just kind of remember that type of feedback. And I think, wow, we're kind of onto something good here. So we really kind of owe it to people to sort of keep it up.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, pat yourself on the back, like pat away. It's, it's well-deserved for sure. Well, speaking of watches, I know you're saying that it's maybe your least favorite thing. I guess, does that because it like feels like work, like that is the work aspect of those conversations?
I think, I didn't grow up appreciating watches. I don't remember my dad wearing a particularly nice watch, or grandparents or relatives or anything like that. And growing up in kind of the upper Midwest, there isn't a lot of ostentatious show of wealth sort of thing. So you don't see a lot of Rolexes on wrists and that sort of thing. So for me to kind of come into watches from another side of them, which is the gear side, I started at Gear Patrol for a reason. I mean, it was all about backpacks and bikes and skis and that sort of thing. And a watch was just another element of that. I always loved watches. I bought a mechanical Seiko diver in my senior year of high school and loved that watch. But, it wasn't because it was precious or anything. It was because it made me feel like I could do anything with it. And that still is the way I feel. And I think having then moved into watches as kind of the main thrust of a career for the past decade, there's still this like kind of self-conscious inner part of me that is still this sort of kid from Milwaukee that's like, this stuff isn't that special. I mean, this stuff, it's cool. I like the mechanical aspect of watches, but I still gravitate towards kind of the humble one, or even the not so humble one that you can just bash around and beat up and wear and do cool stuff with. I think that's what they should be all about. I understand that there are collectors that really want, to line up a leather bound case with some beautiful, haute horlogerie pieces from, Vacheron or Lange or something, and those are great. But to me, it's all about, what can I put on my wrist and what does it inspire me to go do? And that sort of discomfort with a watch is something that, you just snap a picture of your wrist and put it on Instagram for people to appreciate. It feels like you're, the wrong reason for me, I guess. And
right.
And that I just haven't been able to get out of that. And so I think going along with writing about watches, then that leads to a lot of people that assume that I'm into watches for the sake of, having kind of an expensive or cool or rare piece on my wrist. And then I have to kind of worm my way out of that type of a conversation by saying, it's just a kind of a cool piece of gear,
Yeah, it's the supporting role of the movie, not the hero.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear you say that, because as somebody who does appreciate watches, I'm, certainly aesthetically driven. And like, kind of like my car stuff. Like, I know enough to get me in trouble. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like you get under the hood and you do, you wrench on your vehicles. Granted, I've got a very modern car, so it's trickier and trickier to do certain things without, a computer hookup. But, so I'm not really wrenching on cars, at all, ever. And then much in the same way with the watch thing, it's like, it's kind of funny. As I was listening to you, I was like, I really do appreciate watches. I love the look at them. I actually like to have several different ones because they just go with different outfits or like whatever. Because at the end of the day, I come from an apparel background, so it's all about the outfit. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so,
right.
Or what I'm doing, if I'm surfing, if I'm riding my bike, if I'm, I don't even wear a watch while playing golf, but like, it's one of those things where I also sort of immediately thought of the fact that like my aesthetic taste is also driven by very understated design. And as a result, And as a big fan of soliciting the double take, if you've ever seen my logo, you would understand that completely. Like, I just love that, like, sort of second look and things like that. I think the
Yeah.
OP36 Rolex that I have currently on my wrist, which I meant to ask you for a wrist check, but we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Is one of those things that from 10 feet away, it could be a Seiko, it could be a bunch of different
Right.
stuff, and I love that because, on one hand, it's kind of nobody's business but mine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then,
Right.
and then on the other, it's funny. Just literally yesterday, I went and looked at carry-on bags. I need a new carry-on bag for the airplane.
Sure.
And, I was looking at Away, and I was looking at Samsonite and Victorinox and
Yeah.
Rimowa. And, so, everybody's barking about Rimowa and Away. And just the more I considered Rimowa, let alone, the $1,100 price tag, it was just kind of like, even on Reddit, people were saying, "Oh, it's just a status symbol." And I will say,
Yeah. Yeah.
next to an Away suitcase, and I had them both in my hand, I could say that the Rimowa does feel like it's built better. I just don't
Yeah.
know if it's built over twice as good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also, I kind of felt like rolling around a airport jetway, like there's this look at me element to it, in addition to
I know.
kind of like that Target, like, oh,
Right.
he's got a Rimowa, there's nice stuff inside of there,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I just don't. It's just a different kind of attention. I mean, it's the same way where I can appreciate a Lamborghini, but I would never own one. You know what I mean?
Yeah. 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 I mean, I kind of feel like, having owned some fun cars over the years and nice cars over the years, like I had one of the first generation Audi TTs, and it was a beautiful
sweet.
car, and the Alpha and whatever. But like, you get out of the TT, or you roll up to a stop sign, even not even the TT. Like I don't know. For an example, we used to have a Miata, and my wife and I would go. She drove it more than me, but we would go for drives, top-down drives, on a nice evening. And I remember one time we were pulling away from a stop sign, and there was a guy in like an SL Mercedes with the top down, and I was just thinking, is he having whatever 3-4 times more fun than we are? And,
Right.
and when you see him in his car, like, he's probably scared to park it in a parking lot at the grocery store, or when
Right.
people see that car, or not to pick on 911 owners, but Lamborghini, let's say, like, you look at somebody and you say, the first thing that might come to mind is rich jerk or whatever. But you roll up in like a little old Fiat 124 or the Alpha, or an old battered Land Rover, and
Yeah.
you get a lot of thumbs ups and smiles and questions about it, rather than
Judgment.
kind of smirks or judgment. And
Yeah.
I kind of feel the same about Rimowa, or there's kind of this trend about Rimowa, old 911s, Leica cameras, vintage Rolex. They have this.
Right.
People like them because they're rugged, but then they don't use them for anything rugged. The
Yeah.
Leica's the camera of the war correspondent, and it's like, yeah, but like, it costs $6,000 or something, or $5,000,
Right.
and it's. I like my old Nikons or whatever, so it's it's kind
Yeah.
of the same with watches. And I'm being completely hypocritical here, because I do have a small collection of Rolexes and nice
Sure.
watches, but I don't wear them that much. I kind of reach for other stuff.
Right. Yeah, and I'm not trying to bash on Rimowa, because I will say it's the best looking bag. I mean, it looks
Yeah.
incredible. It looks like,
Yeah.
where is my vintage 1675? Because I want to get on a Pan Am flight. Like,
Yeah, right.
It's just, it really is a throwback, and I think that's the beauty of what design can do, right? It can transport you into a different decade, a different life, visually,
Yeah.
emotionally, and I mean, let alone the fact that it's made well. I just couldn't justify it. My CPA would probably say that I'm not in the right tax bracket yet for that bag.
Well, I do see a lot of Rimowas rolling around the halls in Basel and Geneva at the watch events. There's a lot of guys that have them, and I think the same level of appreciation for a nice mechanical watch is the same as you might have for an old car, or a nice suitcase, or even a Leica camera. I mean, I get it, And maybe I'm sounding hypercritical of that stuff. I'm certainly in the same camp. I have a couple of Garmin watches that I literally only wear for specific activities, and then I take them off. And I prefer, the throwback sense or the nostalgia of wearing a mechanical watch. I mean, that's kind of what I wear 24/7, unless I'm doing something specific where I want to track distance or speed or heart rate or something.
Totally. Yeah, I just, subscribe heavily to the buy less, buy better thing. So only time will tell if I've made the right decision. Well, I know you bought that Seiko you mentioned previously with lawn mowing money. Which Seiko diver did you actually land on in high school?
That remains a mystery. I had it for a few years, and then in the early 90s, I caught Sunto used to make the altimeter, barometer, compass watch, the Vector, which was kind of the hot watch for like mountaineers and outdoorsy people. And I that bug bit me, and then I was like, I don't want to wear this old dive watch. So I sold it at a pawn shop, and it's my biggest watch regret to date, because I wish I still had that.
Yeah.
But it was a Pepsi bezel, and it had an Arabic day wheel. It was an automatic, and I could swear the case was kind of the SKX style case. And so I've run this by numerous Seiko experts on forums and other places, and everybody's been suggesting various references, but the one that in my mind it looks like is an SKX 009, but that watch was not made in the late 80s when I bought it. So it remains a mystery. I, like you with your Cherokee, I mean, I'd love to go to that pawn shop, which is, about 15 minutes from here, and like see if it's still in the back of some dusty case or if they have some record of it, because I want it back, I just want to know what it was. And I've got these grainy old film photos of the 90s, different trips I took where I was wearing it. I'm like, I try to like enhance it, digitally, and I can't see what it was.
So. Right. Well, good luck, man. I'm rooting for you. Well, I certainly envision you potentially wearing a Walkman mowing those lawns. And if you weren't, humor me, because I want to know what tapes you were listening to.
Oh man, I was a huge fan of the Police at the time. I really liked the Police.
Awesome.
This was in the 80s. It was just as they were breaking up, so I kind of missed their heyday.
Sure.
But then I was kind of into that sort of moody, introspective, intellectual, lyric kind of rock stuff. So what Sting was writing, Peter Gabriel, U2. Yeah. That was kind of my stuff back then. I've since kind of gotten really eclectic, and nowadays it's just whatever James suggests for me. He's into Fleet Foxes and London Grammar and some other kind of stuff. I always joke and say that whatever I listen to always has to be in a minor key. I don't know if that's my kind of my English major sort of poetic side. I kind of go towards the melancholy, but I like that sort of stuff. So
totally. Yeah. What was the first album you bought with your own money?
Oh, okay. I think it was one of two, and I can't remember which of these two, but the band Journey had an album called Escape. Yeah. It was either that one that I bought on vinyl, or and it might have been this one actually, Oreo Speedwagon High Infidelity.
Yes.
And the thing about that album was I don't know how old I was, 14, 15, and it was kind of scandalous to buy, because I remember I was, this young teenager, and the cover of the album was a woman in lingerie.
Yeah. Standing
by like a turntable, like or something, or maybe she was smoking a cigarette or something. But I remember like feeling a little bit like dirty, like this teenage kid, like with this album cover that was a little bit risque, and so it was one of those teen sort of coming of age albums to buy, even though I don't think any of the lyrics were particularly explicit or anything, but I just remember that album cover. So it was one of those two.
Right.
But then I remember when CDs came out, and this is obviously really showing my age, but I remember, thinking, oh, now I'm gonna have to like buy all my vinyl again on CD because the sound quality is so much better. I remember thinking that, and now of course I regret I guess I have a lot of regrets. Sobs and and Seikos and my vinyl. You know, I sold all my vinyl and all the old good stuff and replaced it
I
with
was just
CDs
about to ask, Jason, what are you
Yeah.
doing with your life? Like,
Yeah, I know. Jeez. Yeah, it's this cyclical stuff. Then I end up rebuying it all for when it becomes trendy again. You know, film cameras and all that stuff. So
right.
yeah.
That's hilarious. Is there an album that you revisit most throughout your life that you would be able to identify? Like the album that just never gets old?
I think probably. You know, I remember I bought U2's Achtung Baby. It was the first year. It came out the year I moved to Minneapolis for college, and it was one of those kind of tumultuous times in life where I was upping stakes and moving and into college and kind of in a relationship, and it was that album is such a kind of a dark, sort of brooding album, and it has this sort of edge to it, and I still think it's probably U2's best album, and whenever I go back to that, it kind of takes me back to that era and with sort of a sense of nostalgia. And so, yeah, probably that one.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I did want to congratulate you on your talking watches. It's super cool.
Oh, thanks. Yeah,
how
it was
did,
fun.
Yeah, how'd that come up, given that you're basically, I mean, you're the first contributor to do it, right? Aside from John Mayer, technically?
I guess so. I don't think they had any sort of strategy of starting to incorporate editors into talking watches, but when I first caught wind of it was from someone on the staff there who wrote to me and said, we were doing some brainstorming about upcoming talking watches because they sort of put them on hold during the pandemic because they couldn't do them in person, and then they had done one with that I think he was a football lineman, and his was kind of the first virtual one,
right?
And they said, oh, we're kind of wanting to ramp up talking watches again, and your name came up as one consistently that people have been asking for. So, they said,
awesome.
are you game to do it? So we did it, and it was fun. And I did it with Jack. I think it would have been fun to do with James, but I also feel like we would have just been completing each other's sentences, or it's almost like he knows me too well to ask certain questions about anything, these days. So Jack and I have a long history anyway, but so it was fun. It was kind of weird to do it virtually,
right?
But yeah, it turned out well, and it's like this time capsule now because I had this kind of shaggy pandemic hair in the video, and since then I've cut it back to my close shorn, more reasonable hairstyle now. So
yeah, I wasn't gonna ask.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, one of my favorite watches you own is that Tudor sub that you've got.
Oh yeah.
It's just so classic.
Yeah.
What do you have any favorite modern releases of, say, the past few years from Tudor?
From Tudor, I think the Black Bay 58, but I think, James and I we recorded TGN yesterday, and we did one of our Q&A episodes, and, I don't know, I swear there's at least one Tudor Pelagos mention on every TGN episode, and I asked James at one point, like, why don't we own one?
Right.
Like, why because I think it's just the perfect modern dive watch. I owned one for a while and sold it, and I'd love to have one of the LHD ones, which has the crown on the left side and the slightly tinted lume and a little bit of red writing on the dial. I think it's like the perfect, like with the Black Bay and the Black Bay 58. They're great watches. What a winning formula, but it's basically the same watch that Tudor and Rolex were producing for 60 years, and so they were kind of revisiting that formula. But with the Pelagos, it's the perfect modern, kind of clean sheet of paper dive watch. It's titanium. It's got a great bracelet. It's very stark looks. It's just a wonderful watch. That would be my kind of pick out of their current collection, and it's the one that you don't hear about much. The Black Bay kind of gets all the press. Right,
exactly. I don't own a blue watch, but I've always said if I ever get a blue one, I'm gonna get a Pelagos. It's kind of a divisive color. That watch specifically, but to all the above mentioned points of that clasp is just genius. It's like the perfect weight. I think it even wears a tiny bit smaller than it measures.
Yeah, I would say so.
And as a owner of the 41, the Black Bay Black, with the ETA movement, I mean, LHD would be nice.
Yeah.
I think that little creamy loom is
Yeah.
so beautiful, but it's just that much too close to my Black Bay Black. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the blue is, and it's perfect for summer. It'd be one hell of a
Yeah.
surf watch.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And the rubber strap on it's good. And
Yeah.
it's a wonderful piece. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I don't want to go on without mentioning your book, Depth Charge. Obviously it launched, I don't know, several months ago now, isn't it?
Yeah. So as of tomorrow, we're recording this on the 28th. As of tomorrow, it will be 3 months exactly, because I launched it on April 29th, or I started shipping it on April 29th. So it seems like a lot longer. I mean, I don't know. It feels like it's been ages since it launched, because it's just been so much fun activities since then. Publicity and marketing and shipping them out and all that stuff. So
now, are you doing the fulfillment yourself?
So I kind of sell two ways. I only ship out the signed copies. So if someone orders off my website, depthchargenovel.com, they can order a signed copy, and I have boxes of books in the basement that I sign and ship myself. But the majority of them go through Amazon. So Amazon prints on demand, and then they ship. So
oh wow,
most copies have gone out through Amazon, and then the Hodinkee shop also stocks the book as well. And I'm not sure what their sales numbers are, but they bought a healthy inventory of them, and they've been selling them for the same price. And if you're not a Jeff Bezos fan or whatever, or you're not an Amazon Prime member, the Hodinkee shop sells it and offers free shipping as well. So,
I would encourage people to just get the signed copy. That's the way to go.
Yeah. And I always put a little extra gift in that one too for the same price, so people feel a little more special than just the signature in the front. But
nice.
Yeah, that's been fulfillment has been a real learning experience. I don't dislike it, but it's certainly a lot of work. And during those first couple of weeks after launch, it was hundreds and hundreds of books, and I got really good at it. And then I've kind of revisited that, because I worked with the really talented designer, Paul Andrews, who designed the cover of Depth Charge, and we put together a couple of logos for these fictional elements of the book. One was a dive resort, and one was this dive support vessel that kind of it plays a central role in the book. And I said, I want to make a couple of T-shirts with these logos on them, as if like the henchmen, who are on board the ship wear these crew shirts. And so we made a run of these shirts, and I posted a couple pictures, and some people were like, "Oh, can we buy those? Can we buy those?" And so I made a run of these T-shirts, and those have almost sold out. I've been shipping those out of here as well. So it's been this weird element of book marketing to actually market T-shirts related to fictional elements in the book, which has been very, very fun, actually.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I have. I don't recall, but I'm not sure I've ever spoken to anyone selling products through Amazon. Like, what is that experience like? And like, how much are you getting dinged in the profitability category?
Yeah, I mean, it's not horrible.
Good.
Compared to it's comparable to with the paperbacks. With there's a Kindle version as well, which doesn't sell for much, so it's not a lot of profit on those. But with the book, with the paperback, it's not much worse than I would get selling through a brick and mortar bookstore. I also work with a couple of local bookshops that are carrying it as well, but
nice.
The print quality is a little not quite as good as my local printer that I went through for the signed copies that I'm selling. It's a slightly thinner paper, which I don't mind, because I always intended this to be kind of more of a pulpy, fiction, like beach read, stuff it in your backpack, dog-eared kind of copy. So I don't mind if it feels a little flimsy, to be honest. I mean, that was
right.
Someone asked me like, why didn't you make a hardcover version? I'm like, I never wanted this to be a hardcover. I feel like thrillers need to be like small portable paperbacks, and
yeah.
So I feel like if you truly want that experience, you get the Amazon version, which is slightly flimsier, but But no, it hasn't been bad. In fact, they've been responsive when I've had customer service questions. They
Cool.
pay me promptly. They have good reporting function on their website for kind of checking daily sales and that sort of thing. So it's been all in all a positive experience.
Oh, well, that's really great. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's something about a paperback, especially in the summer, like
Yeah.
getting it bent and, getting
Yeah.
sand on it or
Exactly.
chlorine or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, these
Yeah,
are
it's been
two
great.
guys, you and I, speaking about products that should be used, right? Like we would our watches.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, definitely. Right.
of course,
For
we
sure. Yeah. And
subscribe to this.
I couldn't have been happier when a guy sent me a picture. I don't know what he does for a living, but he was flying from or to someplace in Uzbekistan on Uzbekistan Airlines. And he said he read the book on this very long flight, and then he left it behind on the flight and said, I'm just going to pay it forward and let the next person who finds it read it. And I was like, and he sent me this picture of it in the seat back pocket of Uzbekistan Airlines with like the safety card from the airline showing. And I thought, it's cool to see where the book ends up. I mean, I've sold it all over the world. It's been in, people in Bali and New Zealand and the UK
Wow.
and the Middle East and all over. So it's fun to see where people are reading it.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, we can't really talk without mentioning your lovely wife, Gashani. Um,
Yeah.
can you describe what it's been like not only working with her, but also kind of growing your career alongside her, I guess? And she's, developed her own following, at least with TGN listeners.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, she came on that episode and people
Yeah.
are like, oh, bring her back and make her a regular thing. And we had a lot of fun. I mean, she's met James a couple of times and
Yeah.
had fun together. I mean, she has a day job, so she's an IT project manager and very good at what she does. But when I started at Gear Patrol and was doing those gear reviews, I needed photos to go with the write-ups. So if I had a pair
Totally.
of hiking boots, we'd go backpacking and she'd take the camera and we'd do photography of these products. And then that led to the watch stuff, which became exponentially more complicated when you start talking about taking a dive watch underwater, and then you need underwater housings and lighting and all of that stuff, and not to mention learning to dive, which she did a year or two after I did, and it's just become this wonderful little side gig for her, and of course a supporting element of my primary work, and so it's been fun. And then when we've had a couple of commercial gigs, just doing product photography for a few watch brands that needed underwater photos, and then editorial projects and that sort of thing. And so it's been rewarding. I think now we've gotten to the point where we are kind of backing away from kind of that heavy focus on dive watch reviewing, because what we found is that every dive trip we did, I would be hauling along 2 or 3 loaner dive watches to take diving to get photos of, and then we would spend the entire week that we were supposedly on vacation trying to get the right shots underwater, and it just you don't spend any time looking at critters or shipwrecks or coral, and so it kind of became when your work becomes your life, you kind of we had to make a change. So we just booked an upcoming dive trip in the next few weeks, and we decided, I'm not going to do anything editorially. We're not going to like go seeking quote unquote content from this trip. We're just going to go have fun and go diving. So
Awesome.
but yeah, it's been really rewarding and really fun. And even through writing the novel, she was right there going over plot strategies and reviewing chapters, and I would read stuff aloud to her, and then she did some heavy duty proofreading at the end. So it was, couldn't have done it without her.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I know you often talk about Bonaire, and I'm not a diver, so it's just north of Venezuela, right?
It is. It's there's the ABC Islands, Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao, and they're all right near each other. And they're Dutch. They're actually Dutch, the Dutch part of the Dutch Caribbean, the Netherlands Antilles. So it's mostly populated by Dutch people, and that's the language you hear there, and the grocery stores are Dutch and whatever, and the architecture's Dutch. And so it's a really unique place to go. And Bonaire itself is a pretty barren, kind of scrubby, dry, windblown place, but it's got beautiful reefs offshore, and it's a lovely place to go diving. I got a question from somebody on our TGN episode asking, like, I'm not a diver, but I'm thinking about taking my family to Bonaire for Christmas. And I thought, I might suggest Curacao because there's just a little bit more to do topside. Like there's an interesting kind of city. You can go shopping and dining and that sort of stuff. Whereas Bonaire, it's pretty focused on the diving crowd. But
Got it.
Other than that, it's great. Yeah.
Yeah, given that it's Dutch, I was wondering how the cycling scene was.
Yeah, you do see people, and I would, I'm a longtime diehard cyclist, but there's no way I'd bike there. It's so windy, and it's so hot. I mean, if there's one thing I dislike, it's riding or doing any sort of exercise outside in the heat. So I always do my stuff early in the morning. But even there,
Right.
it'll be just this offshore straight line, 25, 30 mile an hour wind that's just kind of blowing this hot air. I think it would be just brutal. I suppose if you live there, you might get used to it. But yeah.
Yeah, in Vegas, they call it the hair dryer. It's just so hot.
That's what it feels like. Yeah.
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 Yeah, that's crazy. So what are you riding these days, speaking of bikes?
I kind of divested all of my bikes. I used to have a handful of interesting stuff. I got rid of I had a carbon fiber look road bike
Nice.
that I sold a few years ago, and I just thought I'm going to dial back and kind of just go for a little more comfort. So there's a local company called Twin Six that makes really kind of cool clothing, cycling clothing, jerseys and that sort of stuff that they design locally. And then they've got this lineup of bikes, and it's the one I've got is called the Rando, which is short for randonnée, and it's sort of a gravel bike. And a gravel bike is kind of a fancy term for what used to be touring bike or a cyclocross or sort of a hybrid sort of between the two.
Yeah.
But it's a drop bar steel frame road bike. It's in sort of this bright orange. I love orange, and it's orange and black. And then it came with full orange fenders and some kind of fatter tires and disc brakes. And since then, I've taken the fenders off, and I've put some really wide kind of 42 millimeter sort of smooth tires on it for a nice plush ride. And it's a fast bike. I mean, it's fast, it's comfortable, it fits me really well. And I always, after years of kind of flipping bikes and having a variety of titanium and carbon and steel and aluminum, like this just kind of feels right. And I always preach the go for comfort, go for fit first and foremost, because if even if a bike's a little heavier, like if it's comfortable and you can ride for hours on it, that makes all the difference.
Totally. Steel is real.
Yeah.
Well, good deal, man. Well, just wrapping up, because I think we can't get off here without all of us learning what is next in the line of merch from TGN.
Well, we do have some things cooking. In fact, today I was working on we've got to have more of a web presence before we can launch anything like that. We're now on Substack, which is
right.
A place that I've been using for kind of a subscription newsletter, but we decided to kind of put all of our TGN show notes there. But Substack doesn't really support any kind of merchandise sales or anything like that. So that's kind of the next step. But we have a few things in line. I'm not gonna give them up here. But if those of you that have been longtime TGN listeners will know that we did kind of a supporter pack years ago where we had stickers and patches and NATO straps, and so that's kind of a logical place for us to move in the near future, so people can
Sweet.
kind of look out for stuff. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, yeah, definitely be on lookout for that. Jason, thanks so much once again. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, and all the best with Standard H, and get more of those XL t-shirts in so I can spill some more oil on them.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Jason. I will be in touch regarding the episode launching, and of course, with the Avant tees. I think I don't know if you're on my email list or not, but either way, I'll DM you or something.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely, Jason. Take care.
All right. Yeah. You too.
Okay.
Bye.
Another huge thanks goes to Jason and to all of you for listening. As mentioned, the Avant tees are back in stock, so just visit standard-h.com. And I hope to catch you in another 2 weeks' time for another episode. As always, thank you to Jensen Reed and Super Beautiful for the theme track, and to Clear Audio for providing the noise-canceling headphones. Hope you're all staying happy and healthy. Ciao.